tatou katoa. Welcome everyone. A moment of quiet reflection as we bring our minds together. E te whānau nui, e te whānau hui, whaia te mātauranga kia marama. Kia whai take ngā mahi katoa, tū maia, tū kaha, aroha atu, aroha mai, tato kia tato katoa. For this gathering, seek knowledge for understanding, have purpose in all you do, stand tall, be strong. Let's show love to each and all of us. Ko Joanna Santa Barbara, tōku ingoa. I'm Joanna Santa Barbara of the Nelson Tasman Climate Forum. It's wonderful to have you here at the start of Climate Action Week. The Nelson Tasman Climate Forum is a community-led initiative weaving our community together around urgent strategic action on climate change. And Climate Change Week is our newest initiative. It's centered on the National Emissions Reduction Plan and weaving our community together.
All right, I hope you've all had time to share, and we will focus back in for part 2 of this wonderful evening, and thanks again to the Climate Forum for putting this on and for all the events that will be happening during Climate Action Week. I'm now going to introduce our panellists, starting with someone who probably doesn't need much of an introduction after that, but I'm going to give them one anyway. Julia Milne. Julia is... I'm reading this brief blurb, and it could be the blurb to the film. So I'm just going to say, yes, as we've just seen, Julia is the wonderful founder of the Common Unity Project Aotearoa, and I think overall just a fabulous person. They grow, sow, repair, and share, and Together We Grow tells some of their story. Next on the panel, we have Antoinette Wilson. Born in Tasmania, raised in Otautahi, Christchurch, Antoinette began her career in book publishing. In 2015, she participated in the documentary film A Simpler Way, Crisis as Opportunity, where she first teamed up with Jordan and Happen Films. She co-writes and produces their films, including Living the Change and Fools and Dreamers, Regenerating a Native Forest, which has become one of Aotearoa's most shared conservation films. So a huge round of applause for Antoinette. And last but not least, Jordan Osmond, originally from Australia. Jordan has been based in Aotearoa since 2016, and we're very lucky to have him. Out of a passion for documentaries, he established Happen Films in 2015, with a mission to share stories that would inspire people to seek out grassroots solutions to the many crises the world is facing. Over the past 7 years, Happen Films has become well known in the sustainability, permaculture space, and has a loyal following that includes 375,000 subscribers and over 33 million views on YouTube. So a huge welcome to the whole panel. And now, first up, a question for Julia that I couldn't escape sitting a couple of seats down from you is, how is it? How does it feel to see your story and your community story like that on the big screen?
Kia ora everyone. I don't know that I'm working here. Kia ora. I look at that and I think two things. Firstly, the bribery that it took for me to make my children be part of that. But also alongside that, the courage that sits within our communities in order to share these stories that you probably get a glimpse of, that they are profoundly personal, and that it takes an awful lot to step forth and be part of something that maybe you don't realise until you are given the opportunity to reflect in such a way the transformation of, mostly at the Remakery, we just get on with feeding one another and each other under this really beautiful values-led opportunity of deep kindness and a sense of equity, deep equity, and wanting to fix the things that we can fix. And it's just so tangible to grow some food and cook it together and share with one another. And you don't always realise until you have external observation of the transformation that is being undertaken. So I guess I just wanted to acknowledge that, because it really brought to us deep reflection, this opportunity for deep reflection of what that really means for not only ourselves but all of our beautiful tamariki and rangatahi that are watching that happen around them.
Thank you. And I guess that leads quite nicely into my next question, which is actually, Antoinette, Jordan, how did this film come about? What do you look for when you're searching for a subject to film, and how did Common Unity come to you?
Kia ora. So our focus is always on stories that are going to be inspiring and that offer solutions. So we're very much, as you said, we started in 2015, so we've started in an era when the sort of multiple crises are unfolding around us year on year. And so we're very aware of that. A lot of our research is into that. So it's very present for us. But we don't want it to be the focus of our films. We want our films to focus on what people like Julia and her community are doing to create true impact and true change in a positive way. So that's what we're always looking for in that. I can't imagine our film subjects ever really changing from that. Hopefully in the utopian future we'll be able to tell different kinds of stories. But we love telling these stories. It's kind of because of all the research we do, it kind of keeps us inspired and motivated ourselves to do what we can do in our own community. This story came about, as nearly all of our stories have, by word of mouth. So we met someone who was working at the Remakery. He had a studio out the back at the Remakery. We met him at a function and he said, "You have to go to the Remakery." And we said, he told us a bit about it. We said, "That sounds fantastic," and we didn't get there for a year, I think. And then we finally, it's just one of those things that unfolds. I think this story's unfolded for us over 4 years. So we finally went and met Julia. We had an amazing conversation. We knew immediately that she was going to be incredible on camera. And another year passed. COVID happened. Everything got deferred. And finally at the end of 2019, no, 2020, at the end of 2020, we must have filmed, goodness.
And initially, the initial idea was to make one of our usual kind of 10-minute films. That's kind of our bread and butter, is the 10-15-minute format. And we started researching and talking about this film, and it was like, there's no way this is all going to fit into 10 minutes. And that's how it. We're really lucky to have the flexibility to be able to give the stories the space they need to, because the films go up online. We don't need to stick to TV ad slots or anything. We can do what we want, which is pretty special.
Yeah, and I think everyone here would agree that is a very special story, a very special film. So Thank you for living it, and thank you for telling it. Julia, early in the film, you talk about Common Unity's approach to working with communities and the need to both work alongside them and have conversations with them and able to be able to support them. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. That was something that maybe picked up on when we were talking a little bit about how it all got going at Ipuni School. And I think it's really important to remember sometimes that as Pākehā we come in with an awful lot of privilege, an awful lot of enablement that has come from generations of not having to stare down the face of what true inequity really means. And sometimes that makes us take it always. Ever since we have arrived here as settlers, I think it's been really important for Pākehā. We know that it has meant that we have wanted to take action about the inequality that is taking place around us, but that we need to be really careful with that. And that sometimes as Pākehā we can forget to check in around the delivery of service as opposed to the enablement of action of community, and those two things are entirely different. And when Common Unity was getting cracking in Ipuni School 10 years ago, there was an awful lot of other conversation that was happening around services that were being dropped across the top of communities from top to bottom of New Zealand, many of which are still in action, many of which still don't activate any kind of community response. It's incredibly easy to pull up with a truck and drop off some meals to a child, but what is it to activate a community, to sit with a community and understand what it is that sits behind the inability for that community to activate itself? And those are really brave and courageous and individual conversations that we need to have with ourselves and one another as Pākehā in this country that is tasked with the delivery of a treaty that we should all be taking responsibility for. So those things require long, slow conversations, and the beautiful meeting place or Common Unity is that we all want our tamariki or children to thrive, and the garden is a beautiful place to be meeting one another.
Kia ora. And I mean, just following on from that, at what point did you feel confident that Common Unity was resonating within the community, and what point you'd found that right space in which to inhabit and support and uplift?
I don't know that I really have, but there have been some shifts and changes within Common Unity in the last wee while, and one of them has been in the last month to 6 weeks that I've actually stepped out of my role of leading Common Unity and have returned that leadership opportunity to our local community and gone to work alongside Hokuri Marae and Teresa to form a new trust called He Puawai, which means to bloom, where we work on a Pākehā and Māori collaboration right across the Hutt Valley that is not led by individuals but rather than organisations that have representation themselves. So that's been an incredible journey to be upon. And I guess the way in which we need, that we should be measuring how it is that we are doing in this space in terms of uplifting one another and writing the things that we need to be taking responsibility for is to be working with a community-led response all of the time, ensuring that iwi and marae alongside us, and as long as we are asking those questions and are courageous enough to hear the answers, which aren't always which aren't always easy to hear, we know that we are doing two things, not only attempting to hear what it is that we need to be responsible for, but ensuring that all children in Tamariki are given an equal opportunity walking forward.
Kia ora. Antoinette, Jordan, obviously since 2015 you've told a huge amount of really inspiring stories and people taking direct action and communities taking direct action. Do you see any sort of common themes across these sort of variety of topics that you've covered? The sort of similar threads popping up in each solution?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think a lot of the times community projects can sprout, they're not started by one person a lot of the time, and a lot of it can be, it's grown and nurtured by that person, and it gets to a point a few years down the line where all the work is on their shoulders, and they find themselves in not a very resilient space. I think Common Unity has done a great job of not doing that, and really just being there observing the workings of the organisation through filming this. It's very clear that it was a team effort holding this together, which kept its resilience and kept it functioning. So I think that is something that we've kind of observed in a lot of these projects.
Yeah, I think in the same line really. We've filmed on a lot of farms, backyard gardens, so not just community projects, but individuals and families working to develop their own resilience. And in a similar nature to what George just said, I find a lot of people tend to take on too much. So they take on, 15 acres when an acre would be fine. And that's been a really common thread for us and a really great learning experience for us actually. And something I'd like to talk about in a film in the future, because I think we don't need to take on as much as we do. I think I'm a big believer in localization, and if we can localize, we can rely on our community to do a lot of the work that we have a tendency to think we should be able to do ourselves. So that's probably been a common theme, but certainly been a big learning experience for us. Yeah.
Yeah, and you gave a slight hint, things you are looking towards covering in the future. Are you working on anything now? Can we hope for a new film soon?
We're filming in 2 weeks in Aotearoa with a fellow who is doing very similar work to what Julia's been doing, Julia and her community. And he is actually very much, he's a registered charity and has a board, but he's very much on his own. And I think he could probably learn quite a lot from Julia around delegating. So it's something I'm really keen to explore in the film actually. He has taken over Radley Park in Woolston, which is a fairly low socioeconomic area of Christchurch. And he's, with the council's blessing more or less, he's developed food forests and community gardens, big composting bays. He's got lots of workshops happening there. He's got a pataka kai. He collects organic veg leftovers from the markets every weekend and puts them on the pataka kai. And when there's a lot of food in season, just so much food, it's incredible. That's free for people to come and grab. And he's also started up a veggie box delivery to area codes in Christchurch that are low socioeconomic, so that he's enabling access at a more reasonable amount of money each week for people to have access to organic veggies. So similar sort of community project, but in its much earlier days. And Julia and Michael are in touch, and I think Michael will learn a lot. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm going to do the quick check. at the time. I want to make sure we've got enough time for any questions from the floor, as much as I'm enjoying hogging your attention. I reckon I've got time for a couple more. Julia, so Common Unity's been going for a decade now. Is there something you wish you knew back then when this was just starting up? And is there anything you'd tell someone, a key piece of advice you'd give someone at the start of this journey?
How to do it? No, there's no straight lines in nature, so that this idea that you're going to grow a lot of kai and it's just going to benefit a whole lot of people and it's a very straight line and that maybe you're going to activate some change along the way, that's a crazy path. And the more you listen to the needs of the community and the things that need to heal in order to activate community, the crazier the path becomes. And I wish I'd known a little bit more about that before I set about. I think I probably would have arrived at where it is that Common Unity have arrived in terms of outputs an awful lot earlier, had I known a lot more about that, but I also think had I known at the start what I know now, I would never have undertaken. Some of those images and stories that you see look incredibly beautiful from this aspect because they are, but the stuff that it took that sits behind those stories, particularly around the prison and how in developing connection of those men that we were working with at Rumataka prison and connecting them back to their whānau in the community, those things are as equally harrowing and heart-wrenching as what they are beautiful. I can't look at that and not think of the men when we went into lockdown 1 and every single one of us had to stay home and what that meant for our men and women who were incarcerated. That literally meant staying in their cells. And for some of them, fortunately, that were already growing kai with us, that meant that all of a sudden they could step forth, leave their cells because they had purpose in their community that connected them to the needs of whānau on the outside. When Teresa and I talk about the outputs of COVID and those 2,000 meals a week, that was 70% of that kai was coming from behind the wire at Rumataka prison. And what that meant for the men is not only could they leave their cells, they were all of a sudden absolutely directly needed and purposeful in their community, and sometimes in a way that they had never experienced before, and that is transformational stuff. But why do we need to wait for a pandemic in order for a man or a woman to feel purposeful or connected? And those things are those are the things that keep me awake at night. Those are the things that should keep us all awake at night. We are all born as equitable humans, so why does that you and I sit here and watch a movie while some of our men and women sit in incarceration is something that I'm probably going to ponder for the rest of my life.
Thank you, and thank you for the work what you have done, and I think the film really highlighted well is all the work that your communities have done as well, and as we've just discussed, there is one person can't make that scale of change on their own, and I want to thank you for acknowledging that. One final question from me before we throw it open to the floor. We're obviously here under the guise of Climate Action Week. So first, Jordan and Antoinette, what do you view your role as in telling these stories within the context of the climate crisis?
Yeah. I think storytelling has such an important role in navigating the challenges we're facing. I think a lot of the times it's very easy to feel overwhelmed learning about what we're up against and what we're going to be facing in the future, and it's very easy to feel powerless and like we can't make a difference. And it's also very easy to feel despair when you can't imagine a way through it. And this is where I think storytelling, not just film, but writing, even just conversations with people, play a huge role in crafting a vision of what a better future can be and what we can work towards and how we can both navigate these challenges we're facing and also build something better. I think before any meaningful action can take place, there has to be that change on the story level, because without that fundamental change, I don't think we'll just create false solutions that don't really get us anywhere, or we'll just give up because things seem scary. But I think once the stories, those myths about who we are in the world, how we relate to each other, what our purpose is, I think exploring some of these and exploring the ideas of what a better future could look like in practice are really powerful. And it's kind of the heart of what we're doing with the films, is just planting seeds of, look, here's an idea. If this excites you, then pick it up and make it your own and implement it where you are. And I think that's why we're focused on the grassroots, because I think that's where this change is really going to be driven from, not the top down.
Anything to add to that wonderful answer? And I mean, I think there's probably a degree of shared understanding in the massive role that community plays in addressing the climate crisis and building resilience. But is there anything else you'd like to add to the themes we've already seen tonight?
Probably just to sum up the time banking theory and mission, which is around no more throwaway planet, no more throwaway people. These things are deeply connected.
Thank you. Well, I'll now open it up to the floor. If you do have a question, please throw up your hand and I will come find you with this microphone. Okay, lucky number one is going to Stephen. We'll make sure we'll use the microphone just for accessibility.
It's nice to see the direct contribution to individuals and how they've impacted in the project and how it's spread out. And it's obviously dozens, if not hundreds or thousands of people in the end. Do you see any impact in terms of the politics of Hutt community, the Hutt Valley Council or the district council, I mean, in terms of how it's approaching these issues and what it's done in terms of building the awareness in the community of how to approach these issues?
Politics is always such a fun conversation. Our politicians try to love us, but I also think we're deeply annoying, as we should be. We, at the last local body election, had quite a significant change in our leadership in our local council, which was really heartening. Prior to that, we'd had visits from the council that had told us from a very high level that the council wasn't interested in the feeding of communities because they had nothing to do with council or communities. So that was quite an interesting little bit to chew upon. I'm really interested in the space where we can obviously put aside the things that divide us and find the things that help us create connections. And we are able to do that. And I think particularly around the strategic thinking of being a charitable enterprise that has opportunity to access funding outside of government funding streams and into our philanthropic funding avenues. We've brought $1 million worth of funding into our local body community over the last 10 years. So our council has obviously seen the importance of working with us. But I have to say that probably took about a good 7 or 8 years to get there, and a lot of painful cups of tea.
Yeah, no one here is going to deny that council's almost always late to the trend. And painful. Looking for another question from the crowd up here.
Hello, kia ora. Sue Jepson here. I live in Motueka and I am aware of a great number of people who live outside the community, if you like. They haven't got they don't feel they've got a status there. And my background is education, working with children, individuals who don't make it through the traditional path and can't hold their heads up, etc., etc. And it's with that in mind that I thought we need to find a way of helping people find a purpose and find a way of becoming resilient and able to offer something, to not just to help themselves but to help the community. So I am truly inspired by watching this film. It was so well put together. Everything really flowed smoothly and without any antagonism anywhere. It was really beautiful. How did you get your funding? Eventually, how did you get the funding that helped you? Because that's where we need to go. I suppose it was actually, I can imagine it was more to do with getting volunteers, and then the volunteers extending what you could do. Was that how it happened? And then is that how you got your funding? Sorry.
It's okay. It's a
I'll let you
question
answer now. Thank you.
that comes up lots, and I hope you're coming to the workshop in the morning, because we're going to... No.
I live in Motueka and I'm looking after my grandchild. But I'm very glad to be here.
Yeah.
And to meet you. It's wonderful.
Kia ora. So we didn't have any funding. We had $23. Can I just tell you the maddest thing that we did when we didn't have any funding? We didn't have any garden, and we'd made all these promises to the Ipuni school board about how we were going to build this beautiful thing, and everyone was excited, and then we went outside and looked at the soccer field and said, shit. And so what we did the following week was put a little thing up on Twitter and Instagram and said that if you were a local lawnmower contractor, instead of going to the dump to dump your lawn clippings, you could come to the school and make a poha instead, because it costs like $40 or $50 to go to the dump in Lower Hutt. And all of a sudden we had trailers down the road queued up waiting to come into and it was a lot of complaints really quickly from the smell of silage going on. We learn a lot of things. We didn't have any funding for 2 years, which is the best place to start, because it made us have to listen to A, what it is that people really wanted, and B, what were the talent, skills, opportunity and resources in the community. And the first thing that we learned was no one wanted a garden. And no one wanted a garden because they weren't in that space. So I think Antoinette and Jordan captured that really beautifully when we had to work in a different way, and what people wanted was the things that I can probably assume that the people that you are talking about want, which is the soft stuff, the meeting place, the cups of tea, the aroha, the love. It takes an incredible amount of courage and energy to dig over a backyard and plant broccoli. But what we need before we get there is the soft place of being with one another, and that takes time. And if I did it again, which I'm about to do it all again, and we're about to start transforming all of our local food banks in Lower Hutt into local food hubs and neighbourhood food hubs, so we completely close all of our food banks in the next couple of years. We will start with that, the places of softness, the places where every single person in the community is welcome and they are deciding what that place looks like, and that takes cups of tea, a strong bladder and cups of tea. I think the greatest weapon for resilience is a teapot.
Thank you, Julia. I also want to open up this question to Antoinette and Jordan in the sense of how did the film get made and how do you fund these really important projects, and is there anything we can do to help?
Thank you for asking. We also...
We'll be passing around a hat.
a teapot. We also started out on the smell of an oily rag. We started out with a lot of enthusiasm, and at about $300 a month, I think we had. But just a mission, really. And when you've got a mission, it's, money's not really the point. But obviously it's necessary, and at some point as you want to do a little bit more, it becomes a little bit more necessary. So we started out crowdfunding, and then we started putting our films up for free on YouTube, and we continue to do that with nearly all of our films. In fact, this is our only pay-to-view film at the moment, and it'll be pay-to-view just for 1 year, and then it'll become free to view on YouTube in February next year. So we earn a little bit of ad revenue from YouTube, a little bit from patrons on Patreon who support us. We've had people supporting us there for quite a few years, from $1 a month to $50. Somebody sends $100 a month. Some kind and generous person who's able to do that. And it's a really nice way to be funded, because it means that we consider supporting Haven Films. One of the ways that you can support Haven Films is simply sharing our films on YouTube. And it's being crowdfunded means that people can support us with as little as sharing a film or $1 a month or whatever they're able to afford. We love being crowdfunded rather than being funded by like the Film Commission, which would be a nightmare, a bureaucratic nightmare of paper of forms to be filled in on a regular basis, and I just don't have it in me. And so we've never been down that line. But we just started we've just launched ourselves on a platform called Open Collective, which is a really awesome platform because it offers transparency. So you could go in there when you get home and have a look at our project, Together We Grow, and you could see how we spent every cent of the $64,000 that we were given to make it. And we were given the money by a couple of brothers who are based in Wellington, and it was a gift. And they didn't want any paperwork, they didn't want any, I did send them the budget, and I sent them regular emails saying this is where we're at, and every now and then we'd get a one-line reply saying, oh, that's great. And they didn't see the film until it was officially released. They weren't interested in any creative input or control. And that, to me, that notion of working in the gift economy, especially when you're someone with that much money, and they do have a lot of money, they work entirely in the gift. And I just think that's the way forward. I think that's how we should all be operating. So that's why we've gone on to Open Collective, because in the hope that we can continue to work in that space, the gift economy. So, yeah, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to add a short thing. I think that was one of the things that we were most inspired by with Common Unity before making the film, was that they started so humbly, and that made the film even more powerful, because we didn't want to highlight an organisation that started with $1 million and did all these great things, because that's not very accessible. But to start with $25 and for it to grow from there is so achievable, and I think it allows it to unfold more naturally and with feedback from the community. Similar with the films, I suppose, making the films in the beginning for nothing and kind of getting a bit of a portfolio and then finding support to make more was, I think, yeah, it's kind of a similar path. So yeah, kind of proving it before needing all the funds, I think, is a good way to go.
Thank you, and we've got time for one more question from the floor, if there is one. I'm scanning. Seeing one hand, almost 2 hands. So you're going to keep them up. I'm waiting to get all the hands up, so we're going to have to make a very harshly based judgment call. No, your hand was up first, so I'll come up.
Amazing achievement, very impressive. I've been involved in 2 gardening community gardens. My name's Biddy Myers, by the way. I was interested to see that you had volunteers, but I feel that there were some employed people as well. How many jobs did you create for that place?
19.
Well done.
Oh no, 20, including me.
You definitely get to count yourself. With that, I will awkwardly make my way back to the stage and say a huge thank you. Can I have a massive round of applause?
Funding that we received last year from the Todd Foundation, J.R. Mackenzie and MSD was to look at how it is that we open source our learnings from the last 10 years, and we created an online, well, we're calling it the Common Unity Grow Kit, the fundamentals of a plant-powered community. And so that's all open sourced, and you can find it on Udemy platform if you do a little search for Common Unity Grow Kit, and it basically takes you through the whole A to Z of how to set something up that you are either growing kai for a community garden all the way through to a full-scale urban farming project such as ours. And that is what our workshop is all about tomorrow morning. So if you come along for a couple of hours, you can leave with a bit of a business plan of how to get cracking with your own little thing. Otherwise, you can find it online, all open sourced, and a gift from the cast and crew at Common Unity at Te Awakairangi. So please take it up with aroha from us all.
Thank you for that, Julia, and again, thank you, Antoinette, thank you, Jordan, for being here. Thanks to all of you for being here, and thanks to the Nelson Tasman Climate Forum for putting on this wonderful week of events. I hope to see you at more, but from us, that is thank you very much and good night. Please get home safely, and thank you for having me. Ko Māori e.
Thank you.